The opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect those of Talk Radio AM 640.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Mark. Roger, backup clock is started.
Extreme radio for extreme times. This is A View from Space with the Spaceman on Talk Radio AM 640.
I'm the Spaceman. This is A View from Space. I'd like to welcome you in right now. If you're listening to the radio station, Talk Radio AM 640, or if you're at work right now listening via the Radio Player Canada app, I welcome you in too. Or if you're picking up the show free on Apple Music, I welcome you in also. Or maybe what some call the best seat in the house, sitting in front of your Mac, your PC at home. Log on to 640toronto.com, picking up the live audio streaming from the website. There. I welcome you in. Wherever you are in the world, I welcome you in. Well, you've been watching. You've been force-fed for an entire week, in fact, of wall-to-wall coverage of an Illuminati event known as Hurricane Harvey, the 8th named hurricane this season. Yes, the sun worshippers number, manifesting itself over Houston, Texas. Hurricane Harvey hit landfall exactly 11 days, the number of destruction, after the total solar eclipse in the U.S. Eclipses are omens of things to come. Didn't wait long, did they? 11 days for the first hit and many to come. What's more, we had yet even another Trump-defying missile launch of an intercontinental ballistic missile capable of carrying a nuclear strike to the other side of the world from the megalomaniacal North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. The missile breaks up, so we're told, after passing over Japan's northern island of Hokkaido, the second largest island of Japan with all her islands, and falling into the Sea of Japan. But that wasn't enough. That couldn't interrupt the wall-to-wall blanket coverage of the Houston flooding. Imagine nuclear war takes a back seat to this spectacle in the Illuminati-controlled mass media, the flood of Houston. Imagine nuclear war isn't enough. It was carried by the Illuminati-controlled mass media all this week. Yes, there was something more important to the elites than rattling the saber of nuclear war. And that was to push heavily the climatic changing agenda of the elites. Climate change. The cult of climate change. And they are a cult. One of the high priests, Elon Musk of Tesla Motors, selling the solar energy and the harnessing of our sun, their God. They're going full throttle in this year of 2017 to convince the world that Mother Gaia is mad as hell and not going to take it anymore. Besides technology, climate change is one of the biggest disruptors of them all, designed to change the way we live and think. This latest economic hit, accompanied by a lot of human misery, was aimed directly at the largest energy-producing sector located in the state of Texas along the Texas Gulf Shore. On purpose. They can entrain hurricanes, and it's not the first time you've heard it on Talk Radio AM 640 on this show, AVFS. It's traditionally, as you well know, a regular path of hurricanes in and around that area of the Gulf Coast when they travel this far north. Yet, they put all of the refineries and all of the energy of gasoline and oil in that particular piece of real estate? You ask yourself, what were they thinking? Just this. Chaos creates change. It was put there for a reason. They're way ahead of anyone who is thinking about the near future. There's decades planned. Decades ahead. This hurricane, Harvey, as it's called, by the way, the meaning of Harvey is from the Breton name given Hairview, which means... I'll be back after the break to tell you exactly. And you can think or wonder to yourself, is it really going to fit with what's happened? It's a Spaceman at Talk Radio, AM 640. This is A View from Space, and I'm just getting started. I'm the guy we call the Spaceman. It's Talk Radio, AM 640. Emails to space at 640toronto.com or spaceman at 640toronto.com. Thanks for the one you sent me. They start rolling in before the show even begins. Here's one that's just arrived. GH writes, glad you're on live and talking about Hurricane Harvey. So, Hurricane Harvey, the name Harvey. The meaning of the name? From the Breton given name Hairview, which means battle-worthy. From the word hair, meaning battle, and the word vieux, meaning worthy. This was the name given to the 6th century Breton hermit, who was the patron saint of the blind. Settlers from Brittany introduced it to England after the Norman conquest. Battle-worthy Harvey, and battle-worthy it was. The hurricane was entrained to hit the Houston area, the center of the energy for all of America. Then it was induced to stall over Houston for 4 long days of rain that fell in torrents. A torrential rainstorm with virtually no wind stalled, and this tropical depression, as it became once the wind was gone, hovered over the area for 4 days. The Houston area only. It never budged the whole time. Why? No cold air to kill it or move it that comes from the north. That's us, Canada. Up here in Canada is where this show, AVFS, on Talk Radio AM 640 emanates from. That's where the cold air comes from, too, that was given the most of the eastern United States. Cold air and rain all summer long. A summer that we didn't really experience this year at all up here in Canada, especially in the east, the heavily populated side of the United States. Because Canada and the eastern United States have been rained on, both of them, almost every day all this summer, and always chilly. You see, when it comes to the science of weather manipulation, the Illuminati are experts. up here in Canada, just like round the world, we have two skies now. Regularly. It's right up there right now here in Ontario, Canada. There's the real clouds that are higher than this low black crap that sneaks underneath of it, another whole set of clouds, the chem clouds. Underneath, the real clouds, nearer to the ground. It's heavy. It's thick. It's black. It's unnatural looking even, because it is unnatural. There was chemtrails for the last 2 days. We have not had rain at all. In fact, it has been reverted back to normal for the time that Harvey was parked over Houston, Texas. And that's why it was parked, because we're the source for cold air to drive it away. It didn't happen. We get our hot air, our hot, hazy, humid days, which we used to get all the time, coming up from the Texas Gulf. Now we just send a north wind and cold air to the United States, and we have for years now. But this year, 2017, was way off the charts for rain. Now, the floods have receded in Houston. I'll get more into that deeper than a black hole in just a minute. But it has now disappeared. The storm over Houston, sunny skies, and guess what? The low black crap is back here in Ontario, and it's going to be sliding down to the U.S. starting tomorrow. So expect more rain and black, cold weather to come. This week hasn't rained for over a week in this town, Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Not the rain chem clouds at all in the sky. Now that Harvey has gone, here it comes again, back again. And this week, the weather forecast just changed moments ago before I got on the air. Rain, call it, for every single day of this week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. All week. It's back. So, this is induced cloud. It's steroids in the clouds. I saw it associated with Tropical Storm Depression Harvey when I saw the clouds, when they showed some of the sky, when they weren't showing you the devastation of the poor people floating around. That wreaked havoc, all that flooding in Texas, Houston area. The Illuminati worship the earth goddess Gaia, and they're almost forcing us to worship her too. And it is going to get to shove soon. There will be no choice. You see, the elites believe that the goddess Gaia can be conceived of as the eminent divine presence, the Shekinah, or Sophia, which manifests through successive levels of being, as the various hierarchy of the nature kingdoms, divas, elements, and the like. Evolution of physical life is the external expression of subtle evolution and transformation on the spiritual and etheric planes. They're doing that physically and spiritually, and they're doing it etherically right now on this earth with their events. Transforming, changing the world into what they want. Homer, even wrote a hymn about their beloved goddess Gaia, this female mother of all who compasses our planet Earth. Listen to what he wrote. I will sing of well-founded Gaia, mother of all, eldest of all beings. She feeds all creatures that are in the world, all that go upon the goodly land, and all that are in the paths of the sea, and all that fly, and all these are fed of her store. If I can get to it, more on the goddess Gaia and Sophia, the deeper meaning, deeper into tonight's show on Talk Radio AM 640. Homer wrote that in 7th century BC. This is indeed an ancient religion that is being revived by our elites of today, the Illuminati. So what you've been exposed to all of this week was really one giant promotion, one great big commercial for the elites' climate change agenda, and a huge push is on for the religion of the worship of Gaia. You've seen it on all of the Illuminati-controlled mass media outlets, where they get someone on that doesn't believe climate change. They ask them the question, well, now do you believe in it? See Hurricane Harvey and all that water? Now do you believe in climate change? That's what it was for. This whole year of stealing and chemtrailing away our summer is for that very purpose. The Hurricane Harvey Illuminati event is meant to finally, once and for all, convince you and to admit to believing in their black magic spell known as climate change. The cult has a stranglehold on the world. And they want you, no, they're going to demand you join in on the worship of Gaia. Can't you feel the pressure already? You must, because it's already quite heavy. The evidence to win you over is all captured in the video being shown on the Illuminati-controlled mass media you've watched for the entirety of this week. And you know what that video was? It was the same flooded areas shown to you over and over and over, because all of Houston was not flooded. Oh, shocking. You haven't heard that before, have you? No, only a third of Houston, that area, was underwater. A third. Not all of Houston. Did you see any pictures of Minute Maid Stadium, where the Astros play? If there was a flood, believe me, the Illuminati-controlled mass media would have been there in a second to show it to you. But it wasn't flooded. They didn't show you the business section either, because it wasn't flooded. It was only the poor areas that are around the lakes and the reservoirs. Light going under your head yet? The reservoirs, the lake, the source of even more water to come. Yes, those videos, those houses, those roads simply looped and played over and over and over again. Why? Because that's one of the techniques of brainwashing. Repeat, 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 repeat until you've driven it home into the head and they espouse it. A knee-jerk reaction. From what we're led to believe, the whole city of Houston, Texas was underwater, but the entire city was never totally flooded. Why? Because there aren't a lot of poor areas in around downtown Houston. Not like Katrina, where the slaves, the descendants of the slaves, the black people, had that whole area that was extremely flooded in New Orleans with Katrina. They drove them out. They couldn't live there anymore. And now it's all a brand new build-up area. They were driven out by the water. And in that particular situation, if you listen to the Katrina show that I did back in 2005, they actually sent a team of Army engineers in to breach the levee, which flooded that poor area that drove them all from their homes, never to return. Spaceman. It's Talk Radio AM 640. Shows a view from space, that's all it is. I'm back with more next. Emails, please, to space@640toronto.com if you've got something you'd like to pass along to me. Or Spaceman at 640toronto.com. 2 addresses there. Thanks for the one that you've sent. I really appreciate it. I really do. Get a lot of strength from those. And I love it when people give me some information, and also when I'm critiqued. And I thank you so much for that. So as I've said, Houston was never totally flooded. Only a third was. And those are the pictures that you saw over and over and over again all week. It's because there aren't a lot of poor areas in and around downtown Houston. There's just a few. For instance, at the height of the flood devastation, Tuesday, this past week, I watched the former CEO of American Airlines, now retired, who's living in Houston, being interviewed. He was at home. He said he didn't have to evacuate. He stayed. There was no problem. He didn't have any water. He was in a no-flood zone, higher ground, where all the elite rich build all of their wonderful buildings. Like downtown Houston, all the business section was not flooded. Can you imagine if it was really flooded in downtown business section of Houston? How it would shut down. You know how many oil companies are down there? But guess what? Tuesday was the worst day, and they were back to work the next day, Wednesday, in downtown Houston in all the buildings. But you didn't see any pictures of them going back to work. No, they just kept looping over those aerial shots, and then they would go down and get into the human emotion of it all, with all of the personal anecdotes and all of the personal exploits and all of the wonderful heroic deeds done by neighbors of the poor areas. No, the CEO mentioned, a former CEO of American Airlines, when he was being interviewed that Tuesday, the only real change for him with Harvey in his life is what he didn't have to water his lawn. There was no flooding, as I said, whatsoever in many places in Houston. For instance, you never saw pictures of the business section, as I said, because it wasn't affected. The people were back at work on the Wednesday after the devastating Tuesday. Tuesday is when you witnessed via the Illuminati-controlled mass media the human suffering, that emotional strings being tugged that I just talked about, milking it out of you as you watched only the poor people that do live in those flood-prone areas that were hit hard. Video that showed many Houstonians still waiting to be rescued, but as I said, only a third of the Houston area was flooded. Just the heaviest of the flooding made it on to the Illuminati-controlled mass media through video. Here's where some of the footage came from. Well, actually all of it. The residents who had to evacuate their homes were near the Addicks Reservoir in Houston, Some 2,500 homes flooded, some of them up to 5 feet deep. There are a few of these reservoirs around Houston, by the way, and that exercise was repeated at each of them, breaching the reservoirs on purpose. Releasing water from those reservoirs to flood homes. In fact, at each of those flood-prone areas located near reservoirs, the authorities allowed people to purchase this land to build homes on it inside of the reservoir area. And these were the only homes that were flooded. You watched video of those reservoir areas only, over and over and over and over. These actions are still going on. Listen, yesterday, Friday afternoon, just yesterday, the mayor of Houston himself made the announcement that they were going to release even more water from another reservoir near Houston, and that a voluntary evacuation was given to the homeowners nearby, already evacuated, already flooded, but were to prepare for more flooding. That's even after the rain had stopped. Yesterday, Friday, this order affected some 15 to 20,000 homes around that reservoir. Oh, the stated reason for the release of even more water of this reservoir was an attempt to control more flooding. Huh? It's clear the Illuminati-controlled mass media was pushing the agenda of climate change. It's so clear. To blame it all on climate change. In fact, the Houston Astros, even after playing just 2 games in Florida that were supposed to be home games at their home park, Minute Maid Stadium in Houston, they moved back into Minute Maid Stadium this weekend. They were actually back in town on Thursday. The Stros are coming home and will open a 3-game series, already have, against New York Mets earlier today. The Astros had to relocate, as I said, their series earlier this week against the Texas Rangers. They played just 2 games, though, at Tropicana Field in St. Petersburg, Florida, supposedly because of the catastrophic flooding. In truth, the Astros left town, not because Minute Maid Stadium was flooded, or you would have seen the pictures. It was because Major League Baseball, owned by the corporate world, the Illuminati, didn't think it would be good optics if the team stayed in Houston and played baseball with this devastating video of all the flooding. They wanted to give the impression that everything was underwater. They also didn't want to give the impression that it was business as usual for the Astros. But the field was dry. Believe me, they're playing on it today. How do I know that? Because you'd have seen it if it wasn't flooded. If it was flooded, they would be the first to be there. The cameras would have been there in a heartbeat. But did you see any footage of Minute Maid Stadium being flooded? No. You just saw the aerial pictures of the homes. And then the rescue attempts. And all the heartfelt stories. Tugging on the emotional strings. No, because there was no flooding. That's why they opened up the ballpark this afternoon. Same thing with the downtown business section, as I said earlier. Because there's no video of that either. Careful now. Careful. You're being brainwashed here on this Harvey hurricane coverage. But what the elites want you to take from all of this is climate change. That's the first. Then this. The headline really says it all. It reads, Hurricane Harvey is, wait for it, the costliest storm in American history, even outstripping Hurricane Katrina, in which the same tactics were employed as I described earlier, the bursting of dams which caused the flooding out of the poor. Now, when I say costliest, here's what I mean. Harvey is billed as the costliest in U.S. history because they put the number on it, $190 billion. Mr. Trump, try and get your tax cut money now. This is the perfect storm the Illuminati have created for the Trump agenda of a corporate tax cut. Which, by the way, is driving the Dow. The hope that the corporate tax cut is coming. The New York Stock Exchange right now has come off of 22,000. I said it would and wouldn't go there again. It still hasn't. It's dead in the water. Pardon my choice of words there. No corporate tax cut in America will mean a sharp downturn in the U.S. economy. A major blow to the Trump administration. And the U.S. economy is now, at this moment, the largest economy in the world. You see, Trump has been put into the Oval Office to engineer the United States into bankruptcy. It's his job. That's what he was hired to do by the elites. After all, he's the right guy for the job. He's known as the king of debt. His commerce secretary, Wilbur Ross, is known as the king of bankruptcy. How's that for being hand-picked for the job? AVFS, Talk Radio, AM 640. I'm Space, back with more minutes from now. We got a call, Space. This is the VFS, Talk Radio, AM 640. Emails to spaceman at 640toronto.com or space at 640toronto.com. So now that the water has receded from Houston, from Hurricane Harvey, that's now just a tropical depression, is it all over? Is it all over now? Has the flooding stopped as Houston saw the sun? Wednesday and Thursday and Friday, most of the water receding. I'm referring to the very, very near future, as in September 7th. Here's what I mean by that. Hurricane Irma became the 9th named Atlantic storm of this season this past Wednesday, August 29th. Models that plot the possible storm have shown that Hurricane Irma could curve around and hit somewhere along the coast of the U.S. There are no coastal watches or warnings in effect at this present time, but the latest storm track on Irma shows that she could near the Caribbean soon and start to curve towards the U.S. of A by Thursday, September 7th. Just days away. Keep in mind that it's way too soon right now to say if it's even going to impact the United States at all, or where it will even head. Irma is, of course, the feminine gender. It means whole, universal. It's originally from Germanic word, from the Germanic name Alman, which means whole, universal. It's also related to Emma. Emma, originally a short form of Germanic names that began with the element ermine, which of course is whole or universal. It was introduced to England by Emma of Normandy, who was the wife of King Ethelred II, and by him the mother of Edward the Confessor, and later of King Canute. It was also the name of an 11th century Austrian saint who was sometimes called Hema. After the Norman conquest, that name actually became quite common, especially in England. So these hurricane names, interesting, isn't it? Irma. Could Irma be a double-shot power hit to America in the coming days? Oh, and here was something that hardly got any mention at all in the Illuminati-controlled mass media all this week over North America because of the egregious over-the-top coverage of Houston, Texas, the rainfall and flooding there. But India, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Pakistan all have endured 100 times more devastating damage, death, and economic destruction than the United States of America did with the state of Texas. More than it damaged Texas or ever will. Many parts of India, Nepal, Pakistan, Bangladesh are right now and have been since this past Tuesday also enduring massive flooding caused by the monsoons, which normally happens this time of the year, but this year they've been pumped up on steroids like Hurricane Harvey was. And Hurricane Harvey, as soon as it hit landfall, it lost all of its wind power. And it was only rain as it parked over with just an incredible amount of water stored up in those clouds, picked up in the Atlantic Ocean from the intense heat dome that was built by Illuminati-controlled chemtrailing, and then dumped all in one place. This also happened in India, Nepal, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, the weather system over there. Chemtrailing, again employed to coincide with the Texas situation, to suggest to the world this year, in particular 2017, has been designated to be a watershed year to push heavily the agenda of climate change. That's why Donald Trump was asked by the elites to say that he wanted to pull America out of the Paris Accords. Which again, as I've mentioned on this show before, ABFS on Talk Radio AM 640, that Donald Trump is going to be out of office before he can do anything about that, because he can't do a thing until 2020. There's another election by then. He doesn't get his tax cut, which he won't. What a chance of re-election. So, climate change. On the exact same day as Harvey makes landfall and drops all of that rain, it happened in India, Nepal, Pakistan, Bangladesh. As the Illuminati-controlled mass media started pumping out reams and reams of video only of the most flooded areas in and around Texas for you and the Western world to watch. But this steroid-infused monsoon season overseas has caused flooding in 6 Indian states, as well as in, as I said, Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, have caused huge economic losses and heaped misery on 40 million people. That's why the wind was taken out of Hurricane Harvey, because you see, private insurance companies are going to have to do the massive payouts if it's wind damage by a hurricane, not flood. Flood is not covered. You have to get special flood coverage for that. So it's all put on the U.S. government to pay the bill. So far, in India, Nepal, Pakistan, Bangladesh, not only huge economic losses, but heaped misery on not just a few people, like 1 million affected in Houston area, 40 million people in those countries overseas. So far, 14,000 people have died, including children. And there's stories of infants drowning as young as 18 months old. Get this, a third of the entire country of Bangladesh is underwater. And yet the Illuminati-controlled mass media in the Western world was showing you only the third of Houston, Texas, the city that was flooded. Flooding during the monsoon season normally happens from June to September. But this year's floods have been much more worse. Chemtrail-induced. Mumbai, the financial capital of India, was hit so hard. As a matter of fact, so much water, a building had collapsed. Just washed it away because of the poor foundation. Yes, and what's being blamed? Not chemtrailing, poor preparedness, we're being told. That's the cause of the flooding disaster, yeah. But it's man-made. Floods are, you can safely say, always been annual events in India, Bangladesh, the Himalaya region. It's because of the huge rivers that span both India and Nepal. Remember a couple of years ago when Nepal had that earthquake? Well, it still hasn't recovered from that disaster. And if you followed that story 2 years ago, there was no money going there then. And of course, once the world forgets about it and the pictures go away from the Illuminati-controlled mass media globally, there never was any money being sent because the poor are never helped in a meaningful way. They're pawns. They don't matter. But what they are good for, as I said, a pawn, to use them as sacrifices to show to the rest of the world and manipulate the thought of people to force them to affect change. It's the old cause chaos to create change idea. Change to what, do you ask? To a new system. To the new world order, because they're trying to prove to you over and over that in the old system that we're still running doesn't work anymore. No, they want to build their new world order, their utopia, as they see it. The Illuminati's heaven here on Earth. And it's being built for them only, with only their needs to be addressed. As the rest of us, we become slaves to them. Not that we're not slaves already to the corporate world. Spaceman Talk Radio, AM 640. There's more. And that's coming up next. Hey, it's the Spaceman. This is AVFS on Talk Radio AM 640. Send your emails, please, to spaceman@640toronto.com. The other address, space@640toronto.com. MJ writes, hey, Spaceman, see that Al Gore is making the rounds. What a coincidence. Oh, yes. Another high priest of the cult of climate change. They're pushing their agenda heavily in the year 2017. This year was all about it. The summer stolen, chemtrailed away for much of North America. So, floods. Always been annual events in India, Bangladesh, and the Himalayas, too. It's because of the huge rivers, as I was mentioning. And poor areas like Nepal have to deal with a massive flooding. Why? Because, as I've said, the officials in charge don't care. They don't care at all for the poor. Nothing is ever done to improve the standard of living for the millions and millions of poor people. And that area has many of them. Almost all. There's just a handful, a small few that have all the money. Take India, for example. The people like the Bollywood stars, the elite rich corporate leaders, shareholders in major software companies, politicians who have all the money and they hoard it. Oh, sure. They give a token amount to a charity now and again, or just simply appear as, well, the celebrities that they are at many different functions to say how much they care and desperately want to serve the people. But it's all just a big ruse, a big smoke screen, a photo op. So they throw a couple of bucks at it. Big deal. Like Hollywood came out in droves. But, you know, the people that really needed the help in Houston, Texas, weren't being helped by the likes of the Hollywood stars who have jumped on the bandwagon. Oh, they're giving millions. I have to too. It's all a tax write-off. They lose nothing. And the money doesn't even go to the people. But the elite get this wonderful promotion as appearing to do so much, but it's only always with their money. There's no blood, sweat, and tears. There's no real human offering at all. It's just numbers. Because you see, it's all it ever was meant to be. They don't hold any special place in their heart for people like you and I who really are paying for their lifestyle through buying their entertainment. No, they have no time for the poor. It's always the same story. Haven't you noticed? The victims are never the elite. Take terrorism. Show me one politician that was even wounded at a terror attack. You can't, because there aren't any. Because the people, we, us, were the target. And the elites are never the victims. They always blame what's happened on lame statements like, oh, we have poor planning for disasters. And the national disaster relief teams in India, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Pakistan are responding in their own limited way in the relief effort in India. With no money, they're doing the best they can. The response system has been seriously wanting, as is every year in the monsoon season. In those countries, no one shows up to help. The victims are left alone in their misery to fend for themselves. Every year, every monsoon season, year after year. And no one's coming next year, but they never prepare. That's where they put the poor people, in the flood-prone zones. Here's another one of those lame statements they pass off as doing something. And trying to legitimize their inaction. It's high time we transit quickly to preparedness-centric approach, but in reality this is not happening, and we continue to be in the relief-centric mode. An Illuminati puppet and environmentalist, Nitya Jacob said. I was quoted as saying that on the weekend. In other words, first, we'll just cause it to happen with our chemtrailing techniques aimed at the floodplains to cause the devastation. Then we'll provide no support for the victims, and we'll swoop in with our Illuminati-controlled mass media cameras and reporters to grab the pictures and audio of the devastation and the human suffering caused, and then we'll blame it all on climate change. One way environmentalists say they believe this could be improved is if evacuated people had safe structures on firm ground and not in floodplains. Right. Good thinking. Something the corrupt authorities have not ever done. Yet it happens every year, the monsoons, in mostly the same areas. No, this is wanton criminal neglect. But when these so-called authorities are challenged for why it keeps happening, yet nothing's ever done, they're always more than eager to give the reason, their answer as to why it's happening. And you know, well, what that is. You've heard it over and over again, all part of their brainwashing agenda. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Listen for yourself. Here's a quote from earlier this week. The Director General of the state-run India Meteorological Department, KJ Ramesh. He said, these erratic patterns are probably due to climate changes. He said it. Same thing with the Houston floods. They'd corner someone who doesn't believe in climate change and is well known for it, like, well, someone who works for the Trump administration, pulling out of the Paris Accords. Now do you believe in climate change? Kellyanne Conway's answer was, I'm not going to get into that political question. She wouldn't say it. She can't. Agenda of climate change, this climate change cult, is going full throttle this year. One of their truly greatest disruptors, climate change, doing what all of their current disruptors, businesses that have been deployed like Uber, are doing, destroying the old system, and through alchemy, black magic, transforming the world into what they want, not what's best for the rest of the world's 7.5 billion us. The climate change black magic spell agenda is the sole reason for all the changes already underway in this world, which we live in right now. This is Spaceman, Talk Radio, AM 640. The show's AVFS. I'm back with more. It's the Spaceman and A View from Space, Talk Radio, AM 640. Emails to spaceman at 640toronto.com and space at 640toronto.com. So here's a breakdown of the numbers. Houston, over 4 days, 51 inches fell. That's 131 centimeters. India's financial capital, Mumbai, hit one of the worst humanitarian crises they've seen in years. Mumbai, Tuesday, 1 day period, daily record set. From that steroidal monsoon rain, 46 centimeters in just 12 hours. In just 12 hours. So much so a building actually collapsed. Just washed away its foundation. Overall, 94 centimeters, that's 37 inches, India got in 24 hours with that monsoon. That's 3 feet in one day. Houston's 131 centimeters spread over 4 days and helped out with reservoirs being breached. So you get my point here. If you really wanted the tragic story that happened with floods this week, it wasn't Houston. It was India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Nepal. The ones nobody gives a damn about. Poor preparedness caused the flood disaster in India. 14,000 people died. A third of the country of Bangladesh underwater. Eastern state of Bihar hit very hard in India. Also, Pakistan affected heavily. Yes, as I said, the cult of climate change, and they are a cult, are going full throttle this year. Because the truth is, they let it happen on purpose so they can blame it on climate change when the flooding is, in fact, caused by chemtrailing. It's not caused by natural natural causes like nature reeling out of control and lashing back, as they say. No, it's allowed by man himself to happen. It's the elites pushing their agenda, setting people up to fail by selling them land that is going to be soon one day flooded. Sell them the flood-prone zones cheap and populated so you can create the chaos and push the agenda of climate change. The world will have to listen then. Climate change. Why are the Illuminati's truly great disruptors? Doing what all of their current disruptors that have been deployed are doing, destroying the old system through alchemy, black magic. When you think about it, it's the climate change agenda that's affecting the all-important energy sector in business. It's the most important section. I mean, Hurricane Harvey was steered, then stalled over America's biggest energy-producing area. It's the power source, the engine, which affects all other areas of commerce, like the manufacturing sector, which affects wages, the consumer spending. And the consumer spending now is being hit with high gas prices in North America because of the Hurricane Harvey devastation laid to Houston, Texas, in that Gulf area, when in fact it's a ruse. You have an oil glut so much that Saudi Arabia has to tell and get together with all of their buddies, their clan, and say we have to cut back to keep the prices highish. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. You either have a glut or you don't. And if you have a glut, there is no real reason to raise gas prices, but they're going through the roof. They're not at the $5 a liter price that was around during 2005 in those crazy days. But still, the people are being gouged because Hurricane Harvey was an economic hit and is going to prove itself as that battle-worthy when it comes to budget time, with Trump going to the Congress, which is in just a few days from now, asking for money. Just been hit with a $190 billion bill for Houston, Texas. The energy-producing area is the power source, the engine, which affects all other economies, parts of the economy, manufacturing, wages, consumer spending, which gives the banking sector more and more power to actually be able to manipulate the pathway of the future of the world. The elites are now building for themselves. They're going to crash the currencies, all right, but they're also already going ahead and investing in the new before it arrives. Those are the disruptor companies. So they always get in on the ground floor before it's even here. They destroy one empire when they have already the next empire ready to take its place. Same with this situation. Through history, it's been the same. There's nothing new under the sun. History is repeating itself until we get to this utopia, this new world order, this wonderful world they're building for them. Not you and I, for themselves. That's why our jobs are disappearing. They don't need jobs. They don't need you. They're getting something that's so wonderfully disruptive, they can replace you. Software and hardware will do that. Or so they tell us. The elites also control the authorities, the people that they put in the power positions, ordering and guiding what goes on in these disaster zones. And who will willingly, why? Because of their loyalty and their self-preservation, they'll outright lie even and tell you through the Illuminati-controlled mass media that flood-related destruction can only be minimized if flood forecasting and mapping is more accurate, and that climate change complicates this so badly. So places which didn't previously suffer floods are now experiencing unprecedented levels of rainfall. No. We have deluges. We have torrential rain now. We don't just have rain because it's chemtrailing, spraying chemicals in the air. They do it every day. So a so-called expert on disaster risk reduction in India, his name is Sandeep Dugal, said this quote, "Unfortunately, like flood risk mapping, India fails miserably on forecasting." Yeah, I'll say. And every year, they fail miserably on forecasting. He goes on to say, we have to modernize the flood forecast network and invest in better flood forecasting policy. Yeah, right. The so-called Illuminati-controlled expert, Sandeep Dugal, also maintained, with the 14,000 people who lost their lives in the water, men, women, and children, that a lack of coordination and just inadequate training at ground level was just the biggest challenge in mitigating the losses and stopping this from happening. No. You stop chemtrailing, and you won't get it like we're getting it now. But most people don't even know that chemtrailing is happening. They never look up. They're looking down at the screen all day. Or they're watching their TV with a roof over their head at night. They don't see anything ever. They don't even know that the cloud shapes have changed. that there's 2 layers of clouds now. Since when, if you are anywhere from 20 years old up, have you seen 2 sets of clouds in the sky every day? One higher than the other. If you're skeptical about what I've been talking about when I mentioned this chemtrailing effect, take some time out and examine the sky for just a minute. In other words, get your face out of the screen and look up. You'll see it daily. We're under heavy attack by the cult of climate change. And you know, all hurricanes that are named by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which is a federal agency focused on the conditions of the oceans and the atmosphere, are Illuminati controlled and are all named after personages belonging to the precious Merovingian sorcerer king dynasty, the Water Kings, who destroy by water, who come by water to destroy. Well, at least in the ancient times. They were the ones who sailed to other lands and conquered them. And get this, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, for short, NOAA. You know how they say it? NOAA. NOAA and, the flood. That's who names the hurricanes. The Hurricane Center. NOAA. Federal agency focused on the condition of the oceans and the atmosphere. They tell us they're Illuminati controlled. This is the Spaceman on Talk Radio, AM 640. More next. I'm the guy to call a Spaceman. It's Talk Radio, AM 640. Emails, please, to spaceman at 640toronto.com or space at 640toronto.com. Thanks for the one you sent me. Really appreciate it. As I said before the break, National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, the federal agency, it is the one who names all the coming storms in the hurricane season. And they're always personages belonging to the Merovingian sorcerer king dynasty. Always. The second most destructive hurricane of 2008 was Gustav, named after the long line of kings of Sweden who married into the Merovingian bloodline. The present king of Sweden, King Gustav XVI. Carl XVI. Gustav. Carl Gustav Folk Huberfus, actually his real name. Born April 30th, 1946, has been King of Sweden since the 15th of September, 1973. King Gustav was a cousin to Catherine the Great of Russia. And Catherine the Great had a hurricane named after her. Do you know what it was? The Russian Empress Catherine, as they call her in Russia, Katrina. 2005, Katrina. The most deadliest hurricane so far of them all for loss of life. Prince Carl Gustav Folk Huberfus was the youngest of 5 kids and the only son of Sweden's Prince Gustav Adolf and Princess Sibylla. His father's death in an airplane crash outside Copenhagen, Denmark, in January of 47, left the 9-month-old prince second in line to the throne, behind his grandfather, then Crown Prince Gustav Adolf. When his great-grandfather, King Gustav V, died in 1950, the 4-year-old prince became the heir apparent of the country of Sweden. September 1973, Carl Gustaf becomes King of Sweden when his grandfather, King Gustav VI, Adolf, dies. The connection to the Merovingian bloodline is with his mother, Princess Sibylla of Sweden, Duchess of Västerbotten, born Princess Sibylla of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. Was the last name I keep telling you of the Windsors and Buckingham Palace? Saxe-Coburg Gotha. Hello? Are you getting the connection yet? Originally, Saxe-Coburg Gotha were 3 provinces in Bavaria, owned, of course, by these 3 families who, of course, through sex, amalgamated all the bloodline of the Saxe-Coburg and Gothas. Which really, the Merovingian bloodline has taken over all of the royal houses, and now about to take over the world with their next king, I'm thinking. Duchess of Västerbotten, Princess Sibylla of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, was the wife of Prince Gustav Adolf, Duke of Västerbotten, and the mother of the now King of Sweden, Carl XVI Gustav. Princess Sibylla, Kalma Maria Alice Bathildis Theodora, was the daughter of Charles Edward, Duke of Saxe-Coburg Gotha, and Victoria Adelaide of Schleswig-Holstein, a daughter of Princess Caroline Mathilde of Schleswig-Holstein, Augustenburg, and Duke Frederick Ferdinand of Schleswig-House. Through her father, she was a great-granddaughter of Queen Victoria of England, the 4th son of Queen Victoria. At the time of Sibylla's marriage, grandfather, Prince Leopold, Duke of Albany, is the 4th son of Queen Victoria. At the time of Sibylla's marriage to the Swedish prince, the Swedish press reported that Sibylla, like her father, who became known as a Nazi sympathizer, was once a member of the German Nazi Party even. Sibylla always had a hard time in Sweden. She never really learned the language or adjusted to the culture of Sweden, and had a lot of stress placed on her for producing a male heir. Though she was mostly disliked for her German relations, Saxe-Coburg Gotha, and reported Nazi support, today very little is known of Sibylla. And she's very rarely mentioned by the Swedish royal family, and of course, you know the reason why now. The king, Gustav, is related to some of his European royal counterparts. Queen Margaret of Denmark, Queen Margaret II, is the cousin. King Harald V of Norway is the double 3rd cousin and 2nd cousin once removed. King Juan Carlos I of Spain is a double 3rd cousin. King Albert II of Belgium is the 2nd cousin once removed. Queen Beatrix of the Netherlands, the 3rd cousin. Queen Elizabeth II of the United Kingdom, double 3rd cousin. Grand Duke Henry of Luxembourg, 3rd cousin. Prince Albert II of Monaco, 7th cousin. Prince Hans Adam of Liechtenstein, 6th cousin once removed. So believe me when I say all of the royal houses of Europe are connected. And they are connected to the Merovingian bloodline. So what's in a name? According to Masonic tradition, the year 46 AD, Ormus was said to have conferred on his new constituted order of initiates a special identifying symbol. You know what it was? A red or a rose cross. In the Prière de Sion documents, it's written, one is intended to see in Ormus the origins of the so-called Rosicroix, or the Rosicrucians. And in 1188, the Prière de Sion is said to have adopted a second subtitle in addition to Ormus. It's said to have been called the Order of the Rosy Cross Veritas. That's written in the book Holy Blood and Holy Grail, that information. Ormus, you see, was a first-century magician in Alexandria, Egypt, who founded the monastic order which eventually became the Prière de Sion, the ultra-secret society in Paris, France, which oversees, even today, all other occult societies worldwide, as the Egyptian magician attempted to simulate God's control over nature through the miracles of Moses and Aaron. So, do occultists, enlightened and empowered by their master Lucifer, they seek to control the forces of nature. And they've learned very well from their ancestors. And, as if to boast of their achievements, they even give the names that convey hidden messages and the connections to the bloodline. Here's a list of hurricane names. Atlantic hurricane season with Merovingian connotations. Okay? These are all connected to the Merovingian bloodline, who are known as the Water Kings because they conquer by water. Whether it be sailing on it or using it as a tool. 2004 saw Alex, Merovingian bloodline, Bonnie, Charlie, Earl, Francis, Gaston, Hermine, Ivan, Jean, Carl, Lisa, Matthew, Nicole, Otto, Paula, Richard, Shari, Thomas, Virginie, Walter. All of those storms named after Merovingian bloodline members in 2004. 2005, there was Arlene, Brett, Cindy, Dennis, Emily, Franklin, Geoff, Harvey, Irene, Harvey been used again, Jose, Katrina, Lee, Maria, Nate, Ophelia, Philippe, Rita, Stan, Tammy, Vince, Wilma, all in 2005. More on that in a minute. 2006, the Merovingian bloodline names of the storms named. Not all hurricanes, but storms that are given the names. And why do you think they give them names and not numbers? It's to push the power of the bloodline. 2004, Alberto, Beryl, Chris, Debbie, Ernesto, Florence, Gordon, Ellen, Isaac, Joyce, Kirk, Leslie, Michael, Nadine, Oscar, Patty, Raphael, Sandy. Remember that one in 06? Tony, Valerie, William. In 2007, the Merovingian names used: Andred, Barry, Chanta, Ideen, Aaron, Felix, Gabrielle, Humbert, Ingrid, Jerry, Karen, Lorenzo, Melissa, Noel, Olga, Pablo, Rebecca, Sebastian, Tanya, Van, and Wendy. 2008, no change. All Merovingian bloodline members. Next on Talk Radio AM 640. This is A View from Space. Please direct your emails to space@640toronto.com or spaceman@640toronto.com. It's the only way I communicate. No website, no Twitter account, no Facebook page. I just don't appear on social media because I'm working too hard. Yeah. How do you think all this comes together anyway? Sitting on social media all day? It's not going to get it done. So, I'm going through the Merovingian bloodline names that have been used for storms. And all storms named are Merovingian bloodline only. Brought to you by NOAA, the National Atmospheric and Oceanic Administration. These names are used over and over again. Some of them retire. But the names are used over and over. As I said, Harvey appeared in 2005. And more on 2005 in just a moment. In 2008, we had Arthur. Of course, King Arthur. Bertha, Cristobal, Dolly, Edward, Faye, Gustav. Yeah, Gustav. Just talked about that. Hanal, Josephine, Kyle, Laura, Marco, Nana, all named storms in 2008. Paloma, Renee, Sally, Teddy, Wilfred, all Merovingian bloodline names. I could go through each and every single one, but it would take up a couple of hours, and I have more to say. 2009, there was Anna, Bill, Claudette, Donnie, Erica, Fred, Grace, Henri, Ida, Joaquin, Kate, Larry, Mindy. Notice Kate's in there. The wife of Prince William. Because you see, they always keep the Merovingian bloodlines in the family. Mindy, Nicholas, Odette, Peter, Rose, Sam, Teresa, Victor, Wanda. All storms named in 2009. In 2010, it was Alex. There was Bonnie, Colin, Danielle. Bonnie used a couple of times. In our last 15, 20 years or so. Earl, Fiona, Gaston, Hermine, Igor, Julia, Carl, Lisa, Matthew, Nicole, Otto, Paolo. I'm sorry, that's Paula. Richard, Shari, Thomas, Virginie, and Wolfer, all in 2010. In 2011, there was Irene that was used again. Irene appeared in 2005 also. More on that in a moment. And 2012, Sandy was used again after appearing in 2006 also. Repeating the names, because there's only so many Merovingian bloodline names at your disposal. 2005 set an all-time record, still standing in history, of 12 hurricanes in one season. There were 8 Cat 3 hurricanes, and I'm talking about tropical storms here. Hurricanes. 2005 was devastating. There were 8 Cat 3, 3 Cat 5 storms. They were Katrina, Rita, and Wilma. Katrina, the deadliest of them all, named after Catherine the Great. They even chose the Russian equivalent to Catherine, which is, of course, Katrina. Catherine the Great was the Empress of Russia, a descendant of the Merovingian bloodline, Russia's longest ruling female. Catherine expanded the Russian Empire to be greater than any other Russian Tsar before her. The Catherine era is actually known in Russia as Russia's Golden Age. And, what's more, she enthusiastically supported the ideals of enlightenment. What else? Of course she would be behind enlightenment. Not a religion, the occult, black magic. Man can become God. Enlightenment, knowledge can make you God. She even reached the status known as an enlightened despot. She came to power when her husband Peter III was assassinated. Two of her cousins were King of Sweden, Gustav III, and Charles XIII. I've already stated that. And her rise to power was paid for by her mother's wealthy relatives, who were both wealthy nobles and, of course, had royal connections, part of the Merovingian bloodline. Now, I want to get to something very interesting here. Retired hurricane names, ones that have been taken off the Merovingian list that won't be used, well, until they come out of retirement, I would guess. But here are the names, Merovingian bloodline names, that have been retired. I would have to say that these were retired because of their power. They're just a notch above the rest on the way things worked out. Rita, now retired, appeared in 2005. That year that set the record of 12 hurricanes in one season still stands today. Rita retired in 2005. Another, just retired, Katrina in 2005. The deadliest of them all. Dennis, again, another 2005 hurricane, retired. 2004, they put away Gene for a while. I don't know for how long. 2010, Igor retired. Also, in the 2010 story, name of Thomas Storm was retired. Irene was retired in 2011. And Sandy, the one that came so far north to devastate New York City in 2012. Also retired Merovingian bloodline name. Bonnie and Charlie, as I've already mentioned. August 12th, Tropical Storm Bonnie strikes the Florida Panhandle, causes heavy rainfall along the east coast of the states. Second week of August, which just happens to be the Friday the 13th, Hurricane Charlie makes landfall on the west coast of Florida as a Cat 4. Proceeds to demolish Punta Gorda with 180-mile-an-hour winds. Bonnie and Charlie? Oh, why not Bonnie and Clyde? A logical choice of names for from a pop culture perspective, wouldn't you think? But in the 18th century, the Merovingian claimant to the British throne was Bonnie, Prince Charlie. For example, Charles Edward Stuart, whose grandfather, James II of England, a Roman Catholic, had been deposed by the Dutch Protestant William III of Orange. When James II was exiled, Scottish and French Jacobites attempted to return the Stuart dynasty, Princess Diana's bloodline, to the English and Scottish thrones via his grandson, Bonnie Prince Charlie. Jacobites based their claim on the divine right of kings. And I told you, 2 storms. Named back to back. One Bonnie, one Charlie. Do you see where I'm getting at with the Merovingian bloodline and the foundation that names these storms? Despite Bonnie Prince Charlie's failed attempt to regain the British crown, the Jacobite cause was carried forward by this Merovingian dynasty that is in power today, which claims that a living descendant of Bonnie Prince Charles still retains the legitimate right to the thrones of England and Scotland, as well as Israel, and ultimately to rule the world, since the Merovingians also claim to be of divine pedigree, being of the same bloodline as Jesus Christ, King David, and King Solomon. Spaceman, this is Talk Radio AM 640. AVFS. I'm the guy to call a Spaceman. This is Talk Radio AM 640 and a view from space. Communicate by email only. Space640toronto.com, one of the addresses, and Spaceman at 640toronto.com, the other. And I just want to acknowledge C in sunny Australia. Let's shoot me an email tonight, talking about the book bannings by Amazon and other publishers and distributors of materials which don't go along with the prescribed agenda. Yeah, I've been talking about that too, pretty deeply tonight. They are, as my emailer went on to say, tightening the noose, because climate change is being forced on everyone. You can't have an opinion. You know what their line for it is? The science is in. The debate is over. Look at the sky. There's 2 sets of clouds. Explain. Then maybe we can talk. But until then, and I see the jets that are doing the spraying, maybe if you can explain those, then we'll talk. Till then, I'm going to exercise my free speech until I can't. Will that time come? Just look at where we've come from and where we're going. I don't even need to answer that. So I've been going through the Merovingian names of the hurricanes to brainwash us. And of course they have to attach their family names to the events. So we have names of devastating tropical storms and hurricanes. So I told you about Bonnie and Charles back to back. Could have been Bonnie and Clyde, but they're not Merovingian bloodline members. It's not going to happen. No, it became Bonnie and Charles. And of course, it's all about Bonnie Prince Charles. I was talking about before the break. So who might the living descendant be that is connected with this divine pedigree of Jesus Christ, King David, and King Solomon? The current Grand Master of Pierre de Sion, which directs all secret societies worldwide, is Thomas Plantard de Saint Clair. In his capacity, Thomas is the #1 candidate for the leadership of the Grand Master job with the Pierre de Sion, the secret society that controls all of these Well, for instance, one would be to set up the NOAA and asking the people only to pick from the list of Merovingian bloodline members. And much deeper than that, right down to rules of, well, what I was just talking about with my emailer from Australia, free speech, how it's going to be usurped, cut, surgically removed. Yes, we're waiting for the antichrist, that man of sin, the master of witchcraft who's coming. And he will be possessed by Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders when it happens. The possession, the takeover. It's all written in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 9 of the King James Version of the Bible. Predictable, well, the King James Version of the Bible, another Merovingian name. Predictably, Hurricane Thomas, found twice on the list of hurricane names in 2004 and then again in 2010. Now retired. Hurricane Charlie was the second costliest hurricane ever to strike the U.S., with about just $7 billion. I told you our Harvey's price tag earlier, $190 billion. This is with Donald Trump in asking for more money from Congress. For a wall, they're going to get some money out of Congress for the wall, and then the tax cut for the corporations. See, it's all house cards. It's all going to fall. It's like Brexit. Never happened. They're just tactics to cause disruption. Because it hasn't happened yet. Nothing's happened yet. Brexit's not real. It's talking. And it's going nowhere. As I said months ago, Brexit will not happen. So, $7 billion for Charlie, Hurricane Charlie. Hundreds of deaths. Accurate stats. Many eyewitnesses have said were not reported in the national news media. According to whose? Florida? An alternative news source? Hundreds of migrant workers, poor and elderly, died, that's all. But these deaths were not reported in the national media. The Illuminati-controlled mass media didn't pick it up. A former resident of Miami, Joe Coutinho, told the world the same thing happened with Hurricane Andrew in '92. Heard about the refrigerated trucks and the true body count being somewhere close to 2,000. I believe the official count was something like 26. So why the cover-up? Ethnic cleansing. The elimination of useless poor people. Which is another very tidy thing these Merovingian-named hurricanes can do. Michael Edward said there will never actually be an accurate body count about the numbers of deaths from Hurricane Charlie being reported by the media. He explained that there are far too many migrant workers there who would never be accounted for, nor will anyone even try to account for them. The same goes for the many elderly who had no family to look after them, and the homeless who lived in cars, campers, and on the streets when Hurricane Charlie hit. It's said that Peace River, Arcadia area, Arcadia, by the way, is the home area, ground, where the bloodline of Cain first began. Yes, there is a Arcadia wherever they go. It's in Florida, area of DeSoto County. A lot of migrant farm workers there, mostly illegal immigrants, found dead under the rubble of their shacks with Hurricane Charlie. Edward is a resident of Punta Gorda, where Hurricane Charlie blasted into Florida on Friday the 13th. Unlike the people of the more affluent Tampa Bay area, Edwards Peace River community was never advised to evacuate, unless you count the bulletin taped to the front door of the DeSoto County Disaster Office, warning that there could be rain, flooding, and possibly high winds on Friday and Saturday of that weekend. The people in the community had no warning that a killer storm was heading their way. When then Governor Bush of Florida, was asked why a mandatory evacuation order had been issued, but not for the area that was the worst hit, placed the blame on God. Said there's no science that can exactly say where a hurricane will go. This is God's way of telling us that He's almighty and we're mortal. That's what Governor Bush said back then, in the days of Hurricane Charlie, when it hit. And of course, Bush family of the Merovingian bloodline, why do you think they had, so many years in the Oval Office with the son and the father? And another important detail on Charlie, the path it took. Next, on Talk Radio AM 640. I'm the Spaceman. It's the Spaceman. This is Talk Radio AM 640. Emails to spaceman@640toronto.com or space@640toronto.com. Thanks for the one that you've sent. I really appreciate it. I really do. I read every single one if I can. Not this evening, but it stretches into the week, but I eventually pour through them all. Now, a lot of people, emails tonight, have asked me about where the 13 is, the hidden 13, usually marked the Illuminati event marked by a 13. And Hurricane Harvey, where is it? Well, just to have you know, the eye of that storm reached the coast of Texas at precisely 8:14 p.m. Central Daylight Time. 8:14, of course. Your hidden 13. The exact time. 8:14 p.m. So I was saying before the break, another important detail to notice is the path of Charlie, that devastating one. It took up through the bay from the southwest points up to the town called Arcadia, where the desolated Peace River community was situated. Et in Arcadia Ego is the title of Nicolas Poisson's painting, worth millions to the Illuminati, of a Greek paradise ruled by the god Pan in pre-flood Atlantis. The painting has an esoteric meaning. There's all kinds of things hidden into it. And prime numbers. The title is probably Flood Atlantis, an anagram containing a code known to the Merovingian bloodline. The historical importance of Arcadia, which was originally in Greece, is explained in Holy Blood, Holy Grail. And in that, the Merovingians, who trace their ancestry from Mary Magdalene and Jesus Christ to the tribe of Benjamin, migrated from Israel to Arcadia en route to France. The Prière de Sion documents have actually endeavored to trace the Merovingian bloodline to ancient Greece, and specifically to the region known as Arcadia, and with Arcadia's royal house. According to the Prière de Sion documents, the Merovingians were descended via Arcadia from the tribe of Dan, originally in the Middle East. In other words, the Merovingians as well as their subsequent descendants, the bloodlines of the Plantard bloodline, the Lorraine bloodline, for example, were ultimately of Semitic or Israelite origin. If there was actually an exodus of Danites from Palestine in ancient times, you might hope to find some vestigial record of it. In Greek myth, you do. In the legend of the son of King Belos, one called Danos, who arrives in Greece with his daughters by ship, water. His daughters are said to have introduced the cult of the mother goddess, which became the established cult of the Arcadians. According to Robert Graves, the Dionysus myth records show that the arrival of the Peloponnesians of the colonists were from Palestine. Graves cites that King Belos is in fact really Baal, or perhaps Belial, from the Old Testament. Look at the Florida map. Across the Punta Gorda is Jupiter Island, America's wealthiest community, where a lot of the rich and famous spend winter months, but not the hurricane season. Hobe Sound on Jupiter Island is in fact a natural wildlife preserve, untouched, and one of the unofficial nude beaches in the Florida area. Hit harder by Hurricane Jean were the heavily treasure coast communities of Vero Beach. Hutchinson Island, Singer Island, Jupiter Island suffered less damage. The hurricane seemed to be creating a painting, using the earth as its canvas. Between the two ground zeros, the points the Merovingians will have highlands for their bonnie prince, Charles. Almost poetic, isn't it? It's so well concocted. Returning to the hurricanes list, September 5th, 2004, Hurricane Francis. Early on, a Category 4 hurricane weakens to a Cat 2 before it strikes Florida. Pouring a lot of rain on the central regions of Florida and the eastern coast. Few people would connect Francis with France, the headquarters of the Pierre de Sion, the secret society in Paris, which oversees all the secret societies. Hurricane Hermine. Although not a major hurricane, I suspect that Hermine, which arrived around the time of Francis, was named after Hermione, the witch in the Harry Potter books, who's called Hermine in Europe. Hermine is derived from Hermes, the Egyptian god who taught the post-flood world Hermetic magic. The French version of this name is Ermine, who was the daughter of Dagobert II, the last Merovingian king ever to rule Europe. I believe another one's coming, and soon. Found in a biography of the late Pierre Plantard de Saclay is evidence that his grandson, Thomas, another name used as a Merovingian bloodline hurricane, has a twin sister, as his name indicates. Thomas's sister, Ermine, is almost certainly named after Saint Ermine. Around 726 A.D., the Abbess d'Oren, who was the daughter of Dagobert II, the last Merovingian king, and half-sister of Sigisbert IV, who ruled from 676 to 758 A.D., who fled to Rennes-le-Château. We're told that on January 17th, to be exact, Sigisbert IV, known as the Plantard, escaped assassination, takes refuge in his mother's home in Rennes-le-Château and Rez, This event was even recorded by Saint Ermine, we're told, in a parchment that was placed in a vessel containing the head of Dagobert, which was later discovered by Abbe Berenger Saunier. The central character, if you'll recall, and maybe you read the book yourself, Holy Blood, Holy Grail. And that place, Rennes-le-Château, in Reyes, in the hills of France, the mountains, was in fact what's claiming now, with the new revised history, that Mary Magdalene and Jesus Christ, who escaped the cross alive, went to hide in Rennes-le-Château. So you can see there's a Merovingian connection with this little small French town in the Alps, Rennes. Remember Hurricane Ivan? 2004, September 16th was the date. Entered Alabama as a Cat 4 after ravaging Jamaica at Cat 5 intensity. Highest point on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane scale was 5. Then, Hurricane Ivan caused deaths in Alabama, Florida, Panhandle there, as well as tornadoes, set off tornadoes, flooding as it tore through the other states on its northward path. Even over the northeastern states, Hurricane Ivan actually remained a massive storm. Based on its horrific performance, I suspect that Hurricane Ivan was prophetically named in honor of Ivan the Terrible, the 16th century Tsar, under whose reign of terror Russia became a fully autocratic state. The National Weather Service even referred to this deadly hurricane as Ivan the Terrible. Oh yeah, they want to point it out for you. They don't want to leave anything uncovered just so you might not get it. No, this is all about brainwashing. What's of interest to you, maybe, former presidential candidate John Kerry and Secretary of State is a descendant of all the royal houses of Europe, also, which includes the lineage of Ivan the Terrible. Just to show you, they're all connected. It's the Spaceman. This is Talk Radio, AM 640. More AVFS right after this. Direct your emails, please, to spaceman at 640toronto.com. One of my addresses. The other is space at 640toronto.com. Got a couple to take the load on. GR writes space loud and clear, hearing you in Fargo, North Dakota, using the Radio Player Canada app. A little late for class, but I promise to clean the chalkboards once class is done. Right. Well, think of the show as what you will. I just do them. I don't rate them either. I just do them. So I was talking about former presidential candidate John Kerry, descendant of the royal houses of Europe, which includes the lineage of Ivan the Terrible, which Ivan, of course, was Hurricane Ivan in 2004. Burke's Peerage has now completed a lot of research on Mr. John Kerry, senator, former Secretary of State. For years, he directed that terrorism thing. This research proves he's definitely more royal by blood than any former other American president, including General George Washington, related to 12 of the 25 British dukes and the late Queen Mother. And both presidents, former presidents, Bush, related to Queen Elizabeth II, 20 of the 25 dukes and numerous European princes. Kerry, though, is related to all the royal houses of Europe. Senator Kerry's royal descent even includes the Albanian royal house. These relationships are direct through the senator's mother, Rosemary Forbes. Her father was descended from William Forbes, Laird of New, the baronets of new are extant, and it is via this family that the Democratic candidate John Kerry at one time is descended from Henry II, King of England, and father of Richard the Lionheart, who was the leader of the Third Crusade of the Middle East in 1189. So, John Kerry's family knows a lot about the Middle East and what's been going on there for a millennia, because they're part of the agenda to direct it to where it's to go. That's why John Kerry was where he was. Kerry's father family, originally Jewish by religion, and we know that the senator's grandfather gave up the Jewish religion in favor of Roman Catholicism about 100 years ago. The name was originally Cohn, and the family came from what was then Czechoslovakia. Now, John Kerry is also descended on his mother's side from Henry I, King of France, and his wife, Anne of Kiev. He's a direct descendant of a daughter of King Harold, the last Anglo-Saxon king of England, as a collateral descendant of Constantine Monomachos, the ninth emperor of Byzantium. John Kerry is related to all the monarchs of the royal house of France, including a double relationship with Francis I, Louis XIV, Louis XV, and sadly the guillotined one, Louis XVI, and also Louis XIX, Charles X, and the present-day Louis X of France. The bloodline gives Senator John Kerry kinship with the royal houses of Sweden, too, of Norway, of Denmark, and the princely house of Rus, founded in 862 A.D. amongst his kinsmen, Ivan IV, Ivan the Terrible, the Tsar of all Russia. Nor did he got along with the Russian foreign minister so well. The Merovingians were descended from the Nephilim, as the legend goes, the fallen angels of Genesis 6, recorded in the King James Version of the Bible. A branch of this demonic dynasty, the first Angevin, by the way, French for angel vine, the dynasty was known from the 12th century as one of the Plantagenet dynasties through the House of Anjou, which produced King Henry II, father of Richard the Lionheart, and subsequent kings who were John Kerry's ancestors, all Merovingian bloodline. Geoffrey Plantagenet, Count of Anjou, and Maine was the father of King Henry II of England, and amongst others, Hamelin, Plantagenet, Warren, Earl of Surrey in London. The first evidence of the name in England is found in 1219, just after the times of Henry II's son, the lecherous King John, Richard's younger brother. The Plantagenets were themselves a junior branch of the House of Anjou, whose senior branch was the House of Vere, whose ancestry was jointly Pictish and Merovingian, descending from the ancient Grail House of Scythia. Their heir apparent of this demonic dynasty is Thomas Plantat de St. Clair, who was the Grand Master of the Priory of Saint. According to the priory documents, the Lords of Anjou Plantagenet family were allied to the Merovingian bloodline, and the name of Plantagenet may even have been intended to echo the Plantard or Plantard, which is part of the Plantagenet name word. In Britain, ard means art or craft, and plantan can mean to implant. So you have plantard, to implant. possible sense of the skill of divine magic. The Merovingians were noted sorcerers, you see, and they're still doing their business on the world. Now, I mean by sorcery, I mean in the manner of the Samaritan Magi. The Merovingians were the royalty of medieval Europe who claimed Jewish descent from King David, King Solomon, and posing as Christians from Jesus Christ through Mary Magdalene. As noted not just by some strange research I came up with, by Burke's Peerage, the most respected name when it comes to the lineages of all names. John Kerry is also Jewish, notwithstanding his poor memory that his father was. The Merovingian Jews of Europe converted, often en masse, to Roman Catholicism in order to infiltrate the clergy and destroy the church. Christian church. Were Kerry's ancestors among those? Kerry's father's family was originally Jewish by religion. We know that. And the senator's grandfather gave up the Jewish religion in favor of Roman Catholicism about 100 years ago. So the name originally Cohen, and the family came from what was then Czechoslovakia. That's from Burke's Peerage. So you make up your mind. The Illuminati's personnel directors carefully groomed this young man in those days, called John Kerry, right from the start. First, they changed the family name to Kerry from Cohen. His superiors gave him a fictitious Irish name, Kerry, great for political effect because Massachusetts has a strong Irish population. Kerry's surname, Cohen, was changed by his grandfather when he emigrated from Czechoslovakia to the States. This would make John Kerry a descendant of the priestly tribe of Levi, who are known now by the surnames of Cohen. Cohen or Cohen. Interestingly, research is now being conducted to determine Jewish descent and even to identify and locate the lost tribes of Israel. The Center for Cohenim, Jerusalem, recently discovered a Cohen modal haplotype, purported to be a standard genetic signature of the Cohen family, which claims to be from the tribe of Levi. Now, Cohen, plural of Cohenim, which is a plural of Cohen, are the priestly family of the Jewish people from time immemorial, members of the tribe of Levi. They were the preachers. The book of Exodus and Leviticus describes the responsibilities of the Cohenim, which included the temple service, blessing of the people. The Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, describes an anointing of Aaron, the brother of Moses, as the first high priest. Cohen, Gadol. And you notice Wonder Woman was played by an Israeli woman by the name of Gal Gadot. Not far from Gadol. Except for the last letter. Exactly the same. The results of the analysis of the Y chromosome markers of the Cohenim family and the non-Cohenim are indeed significant. A particular marker, YAP-, was detected in almost 100% of the Cohenim family bloodline and in a significantly lower percentage of non-Cohenim bloodline members. So the research has shown a clear genetic relationship between the Cohenim and their direct lineage from a common ancestor. The research findings support the Torah statements that the line of Aaron, the tribe of Levi, will last throughout history. Now, that brings up a guy who was a defense secretary, William Cohen. who in 1997 knew about the use of electromagnetic weapons to control weather, which could also be of the Cohen family, the tribe of Levi. So why are the Jews conducting genetic research to determine living descendants of the tribe of Levi? Well, no doubt the priestly lineages of Cohen and Conan will come into view when the Noahide laws are imposed on the Gentile world. So, the Merovingian bloodline is alive and well in every power position available in this earth today. Even in the names of the hurricanes. Hurricane Jean, following Ivan, was a Cat 3 hurricane. Devastated the Treasure Coast of Florida in 2004 in September. 1 week prior to landfall in Florida, over 2,000 people died in Haiti as a result of the flooding and mudslides caused by Hurricane Jean. Most revealing? The fact that Jean is the French name adopted by all Grand Masters of the Priory of Sion, as explained in the book Holy Blood, Holy Grail. Listen. Oh, I'll tell you after the break. It's Talk Radio AM 640. I'm the Spaceman. I've got that info next. It's the Spaceman. It's Talk Radio AM 640. Just a student of history, that's all. Emails to space@640toronto.com or spaceman@640toronto.com. Thanks for that one that you have sent. I really appreciate it. So I was saying before the break, the French name, Jean, or Jean, John in English, is the French name adopted by all Grand Masters of the Priory of Sion. Controls all the secret societies around the world. As explained in Holy Blood, Holy Grail, the book, after 1188, the book reads, the Priory of Sion is said to have chosen a Grand Master of its own, the first of them being Jean de Gisors. According to the Priory documents, every Grand Master, on assuming his position, has adopted the name John or Jean. Since there were 4 women, Jean or Joan. Sion's Grand Masters are therefore alleged to have comprised a continuous succession of Jeans and Jeans from 1188 right up into the present day. John Kerry was one. This succession was clearly intended to imply an esoteric, hermetic papacy based on the name John. In contrast, and maybe in opposition to, the exoteric one based on Peter. Now, one major question, of course, was which John of the Bible? John the Baptist? John the Evangelist? The beloved disciple in the 4th Gospel? Or John the Divine, author of the book of Revelation? It clearly seems to be one of these 3 because Jean de Gisors in 1188 had purportedly taken the title of Jean II. Who then, I would ask, is Jean I? In this context, it seems significant that in the Orthodox Church, September 26 being the feast day of St. John the Divine, as well as the holy saints John the Baptist and Apostle, are the patron saints of Freemasonry, and the messiahs of their precursors, the Knights Templar, and, of course, the Priory of Sion. This famed devotion to St. John concealed their Gnostic Johannite tradition, as revealed in Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma book, one of the most heavily quoted Freemasons of all. Albert Pike, who was a Confederate soldier, by the way, and guess what? His statue still stands in Washington. It's the only statue in the Judicial Square that exists the only Confederate, Albert Pike, because of his Freemasonry connections. He wrote in his book, Morals and Dogma, the idea presided at the foundation of the great religious orders, so often at war with the secular authorities, ecclesiastical or civil, its realization was also the dream of the dissident sects of Gnostics or Illuminati, who pretended to connect their faith with the primitive tradition of Christianity of St. John. It, at length, became a menace for the church and society when a rich and dissolute order, irradiated in the mysterious doctrines of the Kabbalah, seemed disposed to turn against legitimate authority, the conservative principle of hierarchy, and the threatening of the entire world with an immense revolution. The Templars, whose history is so imperfectly known, were those terrible conspirators. So, Hurricane Jean stalled in the Atlantic Ocean on its way to Florida that year. Came to shore as Category 3 in Florida in 2004. Was on its way to Florida, and did anyone notice that it formed a well-defined letter in its path? And the letter was simply P. A P. P for Priory. Decio. Or possibly Plantal. Hurricane Jean's Merovingian signature demonstrates the precision in which the occultists are actually able to steer hurricanes using scalar technology. The heating of the eye. After Hurricane Jean, you see Karl and Otto named, perhaps representing Otto and Karl von Habsburg, another famous family of the Merovingian nobility. Karl reached Category 4 level, but remained in the Atlantic Ocean, never really did make landfall. But this must mean that a Habsburg dynasty is not a main branch in the Merovingian lineage of this coming Antichrist. There are at least a dozen families in Britain and Europe today, with numerous collateral branches who are of Merovingian lineage. These include the houses of Habsburg-Lorraine, present titular dukes of Lorraine and kings of Jerusalem, Plantat, Luxembourg, Montpezat, Montesquieu, and there's a few others. According to the Priory documents, the Sinclair family in Britain is also allied to the bloodline, as are various branches of the Stuarts. If you're a Canadian listening to me right now, Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, his mother was a Sinclair. The Habsburg dynasty, which ruled the Holy Roman Empire since the 13th century, is the direct lineage of the Merovingian bloodline. Although the Habsburg Empire is gone now, the spirit of the Habsburg dynasty isn't. In fact, when the first Parliament of the European Economic Community, the EU, convened in 1979, one of the most important delegates and guiding forces was one called Dr. Otto von Habsburg, the eldest son of the last emperor, Charles I. Otto is right now a delegate of the Common Markets European Parliament, headquartered in Strasbourg in France. Karl von Habsburg is the heir apparent to the entire Habsburg heritage. It was also Hurricane Lisa, following Hurricane Karl. Lisa, tropical storm which fizzled also in the Atlantic. Most assuredly, Lisa was chosen as the namesake of the Mona Lisa, Leonardo da Vinci's masterpiece that concealed his famous code, which, according to the popular book, Leonardo da Vinci's masterpiece, the Mona Lisa, conceals code, which, according to the popular book, the Da Vinci Code, will bring about the downfall of Christianity, which is that Jesus Christ didn't die on the cross, but in fact married Mary Magdalene and had children that became the royal houses of Europe. So, no crucifixion, no rising from the dead, no Son of God. Christianity ruined. They'll have you believe Jesus Christ was not God through bloodlines, through DNA. It's coming. Brace yourself for it. The Da Vinci Code brought about the downfall of Christianity, stated there. Interesting that Lenny and Vince were on the 1999 list of hurricane names, and Vince repeated again in 2005, that year that set 12 hurricanes, set the record of 12 hurricanes. The Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown, bestseller, which sold over 17 million copies worldwide, by the way, is the latest Merovingian propaganda promoting the myth that Jesus Christ fathered children whose divine descendants are today living in France and Scotland. Then there's Hurricane Richard. Mentioned by Burke's peerage and John Kerry's ancestry was Richard the Lionheart, if you'll recall earlier in the show, the Merovingian king of England who led the Third Crusade. The son of King Henry II, who was a Plantagenet, and Eleanor of Aquitaine, the mother. Richard Plantagenet was raised in the south of France, the area called Languedoc, where the Merovingians first settled in Europe after they were removed from Arcadia in Greece. The Priory of Sion, by the way, is also located in France, although Richard Plantagenet was the King of England. He was always partial to France. You know why now. Spaceman on Talk Radio, AM 640. There's more right after this break. Yes, Spaceman, this is AVFS, Talk Radio, AM 640. Please direct your emails to spaceman at 640toronto.com or space at 640toronto.com. Either one of those addresses will do. Just talking about Richard Plantagenet. Oh, you know him already. He was the King of England, Richard the Lionheart. Led the Third Crusade. Richard Plantagenet came into the world September 8th in the year of 1157. He's having his birthday coming up soon. Also born in Oxfordshire, England, Richard was a child of Aquitaine. That's part of southern France. In 1189, upon the death of Henry II, Richard the Lionheart was crowned King of England in Westminster Abbey, London. One of his first actions was to begin to raise funds for his crusade, known to history as the Third Crusade. Had an agenda, Merovingian bloodline. Has an agenda that runs through centuries, that plans ahead decades. Thomas did not materialize, the Hurricane Thomas, in 2004, but could be a killer hurricane in 2010, since that's the name of Thomas Plantard de St. Clair, Grand Master of the Priory of Sion. After Thomas comes Virginie. Thomas came to land in 2010, now retired, by the way, too. After Thomas, it was Virginie, a veiled reference to the Virgin, of course. In particular, the Virginie Peretire, the Virgin about to give birth, translated. The Virgin refers to the Black Virgin, the medieval representation of Virgo, the great mother goddess. The androgynous divinity is none other than Lucifer himself, who will incarnate the Antichrist and will possess and will be worshipped as God in the new age, in the new world order to come. 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 4, stated in the King James Version of the Bible. The virgin about to give birth means that the false Christ will make his debut shortly. His satanic majesty is, well, waiting for the falling away until it is complete. And then that man of sin will be revealed, just as written in 2 Thessalonians 2, verse 3, King James Version of the Bible. Merovingian King James. Now, I believe the falling away will be from... What is meant by it will be the falling away of the teachings and personage of Jesus Christ. As presented in Scripture, into the Merovingian heresy is presented in the Gnostic Gospels, which is a direct attack on the person of Jesus Christ. I believe the Merovingians are going to prove to the world through DNA that Jesus Christ did, in fact, escape the cross, therefore did not give his life for all Christians, believers. What a dilemma. Will the world accept it or reject it as they try to reject climate change today? Even though it's being forced on them. And soon to succumb to the propaganda, I'm sure. You can't beat them, join them, isn't it? Isn't that the way it goes? By the way, Thomas Plantard de Saint-Clair, strongly implicated as that man of sin in the Da Vinci Code. There's only two direct lines of Merovingians that remain, you know. Their family names are Plantard and Saint-Clair. Both families live in Haydn, probably protected by the Priory of Sion. I believe, actually, it's buried in the lineage, and no one will really know because names can be changed, and have been. The Masonic book, the Templar Revelation, calls the Virginie Palaturae, the Virgo who must give birth. The statutes of the Virginie Palaturae are found on the west facade and in the underground crypt of Chartres Cathedral in France. Spoke about this cathedral quite often in past shows on AVFS on Talk Radio, AM 640. The most famous of the European cathedrals because of its occult imagery. That's why it's appeared on this show. In Rosslyn, Guardian of the Secrets of the Holy Grail, Tim Wallace, Murphy, and Marilyn Hopkins, the meaning of the Virginie Palaturae at Chartres is explained. The Druids, like most initiatory tribal cultures, worship the principles of the eternal feminine as the source of all fertility. Julius Caesar himself described in Bello Gallico the veneration accorded to a fire-blackened female figurine which was worshipped as a druidic sacred grotto at a druid sacred grotto in Carnuntum, which is now the modern city of Chartres in France. A fertility symbol of the church adopted the veneration of the fire-blackened druidic figurine Virginie Palaturae in the disguise of the Black Madonna. A medieval replica, really, of the druidic figure is found in the crypt, which the official guide states categorically was used as an initiation chamber. Now, other Merovingian names on the Atlantic hurricane list, which is repeated every 6 years, I believe. Florence, center of the Italian Renaissance. That city, the city of Florence. Revival of occult traditions in Europe were born and preached in Florence. Leslie, Scottish Merovingian clan. Michael, the counterfeit archangel who will slay the Roman dragon. Raphael, Renaissance artist. And Gabriel, of course. Michael, Raphael, and Gabriel are 3 of the 4 archangels invoked by occultists in the lesser banishing ritual, as it's called, of the pentagram. These certain rituals are used by occultists to conjure chaotic spirits of the air as evil winds. Continuing with the Merovingian names of the hurricanes, you find Henri, St. Clair of Roslin, Lorenzo the Magnificent, Medici leader of Florence, Italy during the Renaissance, whose son became Pope Leo X, who excommunicated Martin Luther, and Arthur, the once and future king of Round Table fame. Grand Masters of the Priory of Science showed up on the Atlanta hurricane list, too. They include Edouard de Bar. That's who it's named after. Andrea was named after Julia Valentin. Isaac, named after Isaac Newton. René, named after René d'Anjou. Victor, after Hugo, Victor Hugo. Nicholas, named after Nicholas Flamel. Heavy occultists, alchemists. Philippe, named after Philippe de Chalice. Charles, of course, named after Charles de Lorraine, Nodier Radcliffe, and several Grand Masters named Jean. Jean de Guizot, Jean de St. Clair, Jean Cocteau, and Jean, of course, that was used as the female version of John. In the year 2006, there was Hurricane William. I would suggest possibly for William the Conqueror, possibly for William, who is the Prince of Wales, and maybe even William Cooper, the author of Behold a Pale Horse, who's a close relative of the Merovingian dynasty. The Merovingian dynasty, and specifically the identity of the false Christ, for evidence that Thomas Plantard de St. Clair, the Grand Master of the Priory of Sion, is closely related to one William Cooper. Spaceman, this is Talk Radio, AM 640, back with more in a minute. I'm the guy that calls space. It's Talk Radio, AM 640. Emails, please, to space at 640toronto.com or spaceman at 640toronto.com. So, within a month of each other, Hurricanes Charlie and Francis left Florida, and with what newscasters called the 1-2 punch. This 1-2 punch had left people without homes, businesses, churches, schools, with a lot of devastation. The citrus industry was especially hit hard, if you'll recall, and would be a loss to many families to lose the business completely. These hurricanes, Charlie and Francis, actually made an X across the state of Florida, which crisscrossed at exactly the point at Polk County. Now, the point where Hurricanes Charlie and Francis intersected Polk County, 3 weeks after Francis on September 26th, Hurricane Jean also passed through Polk County. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration said that was the first time that 3 hurricanes have hit the same county in one season since it began keeping records all the way back to 1890. Polk County, why? Well, it happens to be the location of the Carpenter's Home Church in Lakeland, Florida. The church where Rodney Howard Brown launched the Laughing Revival in 1993. Now, after introducing the Laughing Revival, Rodney Howard Brown, who also called himself the Holy Ghost Bartender, returned 3 times to the Carpenter's Home Church, where he stayed for months at a time. Brown was generating so much money and fame that people were traveling there from all over the country. From Lakeland, this satanic revival spread to Brownsville, all of Florida and the South. The Brownsville Assembly of God is located in Pensacola, Florida, which also took the full brunt of Ivan, the Cat 3 hurricane that blasted ashore that year. Although the eye of the Hurricane Ivan went ashore west of Pensacola, the city caught the full force of the storm because it was struck by the storm's front right quadrant. This part of the hurricane always packs the strongest punch, combines the strongest winds with the force of hurricanes' forward motion, which is why. And there's a lot of very incredible information, knowledge that the elites have today, now, on controlling the weather. And they did. They actually are manipulating what's being done today. But it must cost an absolute fortune to chemtrail all the skies of all the countries around the world, because that's what's happening. And they even try to normalize it now with the jet white streak cloud in television commercials. You'll see them there. Everywhere you go, they're there. But nowhere is there a cost for spraying skies on any government budget. So it must be privately funded. Yes. Many, many strange things are unexplained. Now, there's a website at Transformation Florida. It features a photo of the opening of the Heavens Worship Gathering, which Malone and an associate appeared to be performing as wizards, opening the heavens with a sword, to get into some of the witchcraft. In witchcraft, sword functions as a magic wand kind of duty. Considering that Hurricane Jean struck Florida on that day, this conference closed. The image is pretty strange. In the Transformation Florida photo, you see one of these men I named raising an index finger and his associate holding an upraised sword. In his book, The Illuminati Formula, used to create an undetectable total mind control slave, Fritz Springmeier informs you that in his book, a raised forefinger or 2 raised forefingers while a speaker is talking means that the message is a Masonic message coming from a Masonic speaker. This hand signal alone would not identify Malone as an occultist, a Masonic occultist, but the raised sword is a telling sign that a satanic ritual was actually in progress. Now, in a book called Truth About Ritual Magic, the author, Donald Tyson, explains the function of the sword in high magic, or theurgy as it's called. The 4 suits of the tarot, The tarot cards that tell futures, divine the future, are wands, cups, swords, and pentacles. Swords correspond to the warrior class or nobility of medieval society. Less useful, but still necessary for high magic or theurgy, which involves chaotic spirits. The sword is indispensable. This is similar in its function as a wand would be to a wizard. But whereas the wand has a natural, neutral nature, the sword is overtly offensive, projecting power to dominate and hurt and kill. It's considered acceptable to procure a short sword or a long knife, and after thoroughly purifying it, consecrate it by anointing and prayer to its magical purpose. What Donald Tyson, the author, who practices magic, wrote is that he uses an old British Army bayonet himself, which is shaped as a sword, hilt and all, and finds it very effective, especially due to its military associations. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry has it in it, which you may have allowed your children to read. Chaotic spirits are expressly identified as evil winds which emanate from the heavenlies to penetrate the Earth's atmosphere. Chaotic spirits known as Kasal Ikob, or evil winds, emanations, penetrate the various levels and divisions of the universe. Some of these enter the human Earth or sky dimensions from beyond. Others are raised, summoned, emanated, or generated by the ill will of the incarnate living. Without fixed form, no home, no purpose or character, these chaotic spirits accumulate, then wreak havoc, weaken, then sicken, and then ultimately destroy the incarnate living. Left unchecked, those forces will ultimately destroy the fabric of the universe itself. Chaotic spirits, you see, are typically identified and cast out of time and space with all due haste by the most self-deluded practitioners of evil. In other words, those self-deluded sorcerers believe that they are casting out chaotic spirits, but they are in fact summoning more of these devils. It's like shamans. Shamans identify or manipulate the effects which events in other worlds may have upon the human community. This placement entails curling, divination, spirit possession, and other ritual activities designed to identify disturbances and restore harmony among the distinct parts and inhabitants of the universe. From what we've been able to gather, the reason the sword possesses such magical power is because when it is upraised, it becomes an inverted cross and also a phallic symbol. Notice the inverted cross, upside down cross. And Satanists see the cross as representative of a religious tradition. They despise it and would oppose it, so they do exactly the opposite of it. They turn it upside down and use it. Yes, the rituals that the elites use, all designed, one thing in mind, to transform the world, transform the earth into a new world order. Yeah, it's, as noted, occult occult rituals believed to have heightened the effect when the initiated, or uninitiated rather, participate in them with no knowledge of what they're really doing. And the fact that so many people who believe in Christianity are actually practicing witchcraft with no qualms whatsoever, make an open mockery of the Christian faith and brings reproach on the name of Jesus Christ. Spiritual warfare is underway. Wonder who wins. It's the Spaceman on Talk Radio, AM 640. More next. I'm the guy to call Spaceman. It's Talk Radio, AM 640. Emails, please send them to one of two locations, space@640toronto.com or spaceman@640toronto.com. So all of this black magic, these spells that are put on by the elites who are manipulating our weather through chemtrailing, science to manipulate weather, it's all to force us into the belief of climate change and the worship of Gaia instead of, well, whoever or whatever you call God today. Hesiod's theology tells how after chaos came broad-breasted Gaia, the everlasting foundation of the gods of Olympus. See, in Greek mythology, chaos or chaos is the original state of existence from which the first gods appeared. In other words, it is the dark void of space. It's made from a mixture of what the ancient Greeks considered the four elements: earth, air, water, and fire. For example, when logs burned, the flames were attributed to the fire in it, the smoke, the air in it, the water, and grease that came from were supposedly to be the water, and the ashes left over were the earth. In Greek, it's xok, which is usually pronounced similarly to house or cows, but in Greek it means gaping void. She brought forth Uranus, did chaos. The starry sky, her equal to cover her, the hills and the fruitless deep of the sea, Pontus, without sweet union of love out of her own self through parthenogenesis. Now, that, if you're not familiar with that, is an asexual form of reproduction found in females only, where growth and development of an embryo or seed occurs without fertilization by males. Parthenogenesis occurs naturally in some species, as a matter of fact, in nature, including most lower plants. Calico, succulent plant, genus of South Africa, invertebrates, water fleas, aphids, some bees even, some scorpions. Species are this way. Parasitic wasps are. Vertebrates, some vertebrates. Some reptiles, too. Fish, and very rarely birds. Sharks. That type of reproduction has been induced artificially in other species. But afterwards, Hesiod tells, she lay with her son, Uranus, and bore the world ocean, Oceanus, Coeus, and Creus, and the Titans Hyperion, and Iapetus, Thea, Rhea, Themis, Mnemosyne, Phoebe of the Golden Crown, and Tethys. After them was born Cronus, the wily, youngest and most terrible of her children. Hesiod's mentions of Gaia, of other children she conceived with Uranus, were first the giant one-eyed Cyclops Brontes, the Steropes, and the bright Argus. Strength and might and craft were in their works. Then he adds the three terrible hundred-handed sons of earth and heaven, Hecatontures, Cotus, Briareos, Gyges, each with 50 heads. Uranus hid Hecatontures and the Cyclops in Tartarus, so that they would never see the light of day, rejoicing in this evil doing. This caused pain to Gaia. Tartarus was her bowels, so she created gray flint, as the legend goes, or adamantine, and shaped a great flint sickle, gathered together Cronus and his brothers to ask them to obey her. And only Cronus, the youngest, had the daring to take the flint sickle she made and castrate his father as he approached Gaia to have intercourse with her. And from the drops of blood and semen, Gaia bore still more progeny, the strong Erinyes, the armored Gigantes, and the ash tree nymphs called Malai. From the testicles of Uranus, the sea, came Aphrodite. For this, a Greek etymologist urged Uranus called his sons Titans, meaning strainers, because they strained and did presumptuously a fearful deed, for which vengeance would come afterwards. For as Uranus had been deposed by his son Cronus, so was Cronus destined to be overthrown by Zeus, the son born to him by his father's sister Rhea. In the meantime, the Titans released the Cyclops from Tartarus and Cronus and was awarded the kingship among them, beginning what we call today in ancient history as the Golden Age. So you see, the Illuminati, in their belief and love of the goddess Gaia, is just one evil family who brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers all had sex with one another to keep the power as the one family, killing one another. Such is the beginning of the Merovingian dynasty. Zeus, it's said in the myths, hid Elara, one of his lovers, from Hera by hiding her under the earth. His son, by Elara, the giant Tycheus, is therefore sometimes said to be the son of Gaia, the earth goddess, and Elara. Gaia also made Aristeus immortal. She is believed by some sources, Gaia, to be the original deity behind the oracle at Delphi, which of course would tell certain people the future of what would come to pass. She passed her powers on to depending on the source, Poseidon, Apollo, or Themis. Apollo is the best known as the oracle power behind Delphi, long established by the time Homer, having killed Gaia's child Python there, and usurped the chthonic power. Hera then punishes Apollo for this by sending him to King Admetus as a shepherd for 9 years. Oaths sworn in the name of Gaia in ancient Greece were considered the most binding of all. So in classical art, Gaia, the Illuminati's goddess, was represented in one of two ways. In Athenian paintings, she was shown as a matronly woman, only half risen from the earth, often in the act of handing the baby Eratosthenes, a future king of Athens, to Athena to foster. Later in mosaic representations, drawings, she appears as a woman reclining upon the earth surrounded by a host of carpi, infant gods of the fruits of the earth. Etymologically, Gaia is a compound word of two elements. Ge, meaning earth, it's found in many neologisms, such as geography, writing about the earth, geology, words about the earth. Ge is a pre-Greek substrate word that comes, some relate to the Sumerian ki, also meaning earth. Aya is a derivation of an Indo-European stem meaning grandmother, and the full etymology of Gaia would then appear to have been grandmother earth. Some sources, like anthropologists James Mellart, Barbara Walker, claim that Gaia, as the Mother Earth, is a later form of a pre-Indo-European Great Mother who had been venerated in Neolithic times, but this point is controversial in academic communities. See, belief in nurturing the Earth Mother is often a feature of modern neo-pagan goddess worship, which is typically linked to practitioners of this religion in the Neolithic goddess theory. A lot of neo-pagans, sun worshippers, actively worship God, Gaia, and the beliefs that surround Gaia. They vary, ranging from the common Wiccan belief that Gaia is the earth, or in some cases the spiritual embodiment of the earth, or the goddess of the earth, to the broader neo-pagan belief that Gaia is the goddess of all creation, a mother goddess from which all other gods spring, sometimes thought to embody the planets, the earth, and more. It's the Spaceman. This is Talk Radio, AM 640. I'm the guy they call the Spaceman. It's Talk Radio, AM 640. Final segment in tonight's show. I said at the beginning of the show, if you were with me then, that Gaia is also likened to Sophia. Sophia means knowledge. And it's a name that's tied in with the demiurge. And when she saw the consequences, of course, of her desire, it changed into a form of a lion-faced serpent, and its eyes were like lightning fires which flashed. She cast it away from her, outside that place that no one of the immortal ones might see it, for she had created this in ignorance, and she surrounded it with a luminous cloud. She places a throne in the middle of the cloud that no one might see it except the Holy Spirit, who is called the Mother of the Living. And she called his name Yaldabaoth. Sophia Achamoth, a very high spirit in witchcraft, an emanation along with her consort, the Christ of her mother, the elder Sophia. They all lived in the spiritual land beyond the earth called Piroma, the legend goes. Gazing down into the world of matter, the younger Sophia sees reflected there a transcended light. Drawn by desire to possess this light and duplicate its image, she leaves her heavenly consort, the Christ, and descends into the world of matter, earth, where she rushes about hovering to and fro, trying to impart life to the chaotic inner elements. Finally, she becomes helplessly immersed in mud, unable to get herself out. Nevertheless, just by sheer contact with matter, she produces a being, an odd, lion-faced entity whom she calls Ildabaoth. Chaos. A child of chaos. When she sees the imperfection that she's produced, she realizes she's acted in ignorance. She escapes from the lower space, builds a strong barrier or veil between the world of spirit and the world of matter. Ildabaoth is therefore the son of darkness who cannot see that there exists anything above him. Ildabaoth is ambitious, proud, but despite his many imperfections, he has captured some of the pure light from his mother, Sophia. In his domain, he produces 7 sons, declaring himself the higher god. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? Lucifer, the god of light. The Illuminati's god. That's why the Illuminati love Sophia and Gaia so much. One and the same personage. In his great ambition, Ildabaoth decides to create a man after an image he had seen reflected in the waters of space. He employs all the powers of his various creations, but the creature proves a failure. Helpless, ignorant, crawling on the ground like a worm. So he is forced to call on the help of his mother, Sophia, who sends him an impulse of divine light. This animates the man, and he rises to life. You see? Gaia, Sophia. The very first God. This is who the Illuminati believe she is. Earth. But seeing the newly made creation soar higher and higher because of the spiritual light from Sophia, Ildabaoth, Lucifer, flies into a rage of jealousy, angrily staring into the deep abyss of matter. His ambition reflected back to him, and there arises a serpent with eyes flashing red. It is Satan, the Ophiomorphos, having the form of a serpent, an embodiment of the envy and cunning. After his actions, this Ildabaoth encases his creation, symbolizes it in Adam and Eve. To keep them closely tied to the earth, he embodies them in mud. He builds for them the Garden of Paradise, giving them all the gifts therein. But lest they taste death, he forbids them to eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Sophia Achamoth, from her kingdom above, is always watching over, protecting humanity, seeing the world that Ildabaoth had fashioned. She sends her own serpent, the Ophis, or Agathodamon, a divine instructor, who induces Adam and Eve to taste the forbidden fruit of knowledge, though they are cast from the Garden of Eden, and do indeed learn the sorrow of death. The divine wisdom stays with them throughout every trial of their worldly life. In the final act, after watching mankind struggle through aeons of pain and conflict, constantly pursued by Ildabaoth's cunning, Sophia begs her mother, Sophia the Elder, to send the Christ to help humanity in its unending torment. It is through this crucifixion resurrection that the kingdom of matter is finally subdued, and Ildabaoth's reign of blindness comes to an end. From his throne in the heavens, the Christ continues to reign, collecting all of the souls who have triumphed like him, each one freeing a portion of light encased in the kingdom of matter. It's the creation of humanity, as seen through the eyes of the Illuminati. The myth of Sophia can be seen as a retelling of cosmological events that focused on the creation or individualization of the human kingdom on Earth. The elder Sophia, the grandmother, is the creative force behind what's known in the occult as the second-ray solar system of love and wisdom. Just as the job of the former third-ray solar system was to develop physical life, so the job of the second-ray system was to develop the mentality that will lead mankind out of purely physical living into a greater expression of spirituality. Enlightenment is what they're getting at. The creation of humanity is the key element of that profound evolutionary step, as the human kingdom is the one which develops the quality of mind which bridges between the world of matter and the world of spirit. In the myth, you see a variety of creators. The lower Sophia does the bidding of the higher Sophia, and the Christos acts as the go-between, but each, in a different way, expresses the second ray, or the higher light that is trying to be born. When Sophia goes about her task of creating, she can only produce a creature of the low order, Ildabaoth, who becomes the creator of our physical world. Gnostics, of course, ones who become God through knowledge, say he is identical with Demiurge or Jehovah of the Old Testament. He and his 7 sons represent the lower order of material creators. Just as we say that matter is blind, so in the story is Ildabaoth, known as Sakla, the blind. Because when Sophia sees the imperfection that she has created, she draws a veil, which keeps him from seeing the higher light. So you can see the tremendous power which Ildabaoth thinks he possesses. Because he is blind to the higher realms, he thinks he is the only God, and arrogantly declares, I am God, and there is no other God beside me. He represents, in a personal sense, the human being's own narrowness of vision, of blindness to the higher realms, which, when accessed, can animate and enlighten all of the efforts, according to the Illuminati. That's how you become enlightened. He also represents the resistance to the growth of the lower of the higher order, and the duality and evil. So, in The Secret Doctrine, Blavatsky wrote about the creation of that human being, and her story parallels that of Ildabaoth and his sons. I believe that bloodline is running our world today, and that's why they're believing in this occult religion they've created. This has been A View from Space on Talk Radio AM 640. Coast to Coast is next on Spaceman. I'm out.